We're okay. So we're going to start. May I have entertain the motion for approving the SAC minutes from September 22nd?
So move.
Okay.
Who's
Okay,
second?
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Oh, there's Jim. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry,
Onward.
I didn't catch who seconded.
Jim.
I did.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah,
We're
Jay.
moving on to the 2022 proposed annual budget.
Hey, folks, hopefully you can all hear me okay. There is no changes in the budget. There is going to be a recommended 5.2% COLA for the district. There will not be any increase in the medical benefit, and there are any changes within the budget itself. I'm proposing and recommending that the Sewer Advisory Committee make a motion to accept the budget as written.
Could I bring up something, Randy, first?
Certainly.
I thought about this and, it may not be something you'd want to entertain this year. I certainly would leave that. But I have some strong feelings that the capital spreadsheet for the out years, if I heard it right, those are in current year dollars. And
That is correct.
I would like to see that in future budgets have a inflation factor tied to it, so it gives them more realistic in the out years, showing what some of the projects true costs could be. Usually in talking to various budget folks over my years, I've usually seen that a 3% figure each year attached to each year could do it. I don't want to rain on the parade or change things for this year, but I think it's something that should be considered for the next year.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Jay, because that's currently what I'm doing with the district budget. Historically, the budgets have been presented as a current year dollar budget and as a flat budget. In other words, everything's represented for the current budget year.
Right.
Currently, what I'm working on is I have taken in 10 years of the ENR CCI numbers and 10 years of the CPIU. Matter of fact, Monday, we're meeting on the capital budget for WSUD. The board is going to see in the capital plan for year 2022 that ENR CCI number compounded into it, and then the compounded rate of 3.5% for a buffer. When you look at the overall CPIU number for the last 10 years, it's averaged 2.5% between July and August, or June and August. Those CPI numbers, and that's what we're going to put in for inflationary factors, and it's going to be readily identified that those are projected based on those inflation factors over time, and then annualized every year depending on whatever that current inflation factor is to adjust those future projected numbers. So you will see that next year in the SQUIRF budget. If you notice over the last 3 years, we have modified how that's being presented, and we've consolidated some of this, rearranged some of it, and that's the next thing you will see in the SQUIRF budget is those projected net present values over the years.
So basically, I was straight man for this one.
No, I didn't want to change too much too
Yeah.
fast
Yeah.
because I've been talking to our board. Matter of fact, this is going to be our second meeting with our capital projects. I presented them the flat budget, and then we talked about those escalations that happen. I went back and got historical data so that we have something to work with, so they can understand that some of those dollars may be overly inflated,
Right.
but they will give you a projection of what you're looking at for future dollars. Because if you don't have those projections, it makes it very difficult for you to make an assessment on what those rates may need to be. You cannot run flat dollars over a long term and expect to set your rates accurately.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
So you did settle on the 5.2%?
Our board has not approved that. We did have a discussion at a board meeting. The board, I presented a methodology with a cap and a floor. Our board at this time was not receptive to that. I had a mathematical formula that I had figured in that adjusted for anything over a 4%, but they weren't ready to make that any kind of policy decision. They wanted some basis to that was consistent to make the budget recommendation on. We have historically used that August CPIU number. I did talk to the board about this, and what we're going to do is move that back to the June CPIU number, which is more consistent with what more utilities and also cities and counties are using in our area for a number, but many of them do have floor and ceilings on those numbers.
But I thought I heard you say that you were going to go with the 5.2% at the very beginning, but you
Correct.
are actually going to be,
Well, that's what's going to be recommended to our board.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait a minute. What was the June figure?
The June figure was 5.4%. The August figure was 5.2%.
John, what is Kitsap Transit going with right now?
Well, we're planning next year to be 3.5%. Some of our folks in the region are 3.5 or 3.5 to 4.5. Thurston County is at 4.5%.
Okay, so
The first half of 2021 was 3.5%.
And I will put a caveat, we're also in the midst of negotiating with 3 of our unions, and we plan for 3.5, but if we settle for something different, if it's more than 3.5, then we go back and make adjustments for the non-represented folks, but that's really being driven by negotiations. And in our situation, it's kind of like law enforcement. Our employees have binding arbitration, so we don't have an awful lot of flexibility. We usually look at our comparables and base it on that.
right.
So with that said, you must understand that even though that's the recommendation based on that CPIU number, our board still has to consider, and obviously they can accept, reject, or determine what that is at their discretion.
So Susan, Jim, when are you guys you think you're gonna be dealing with the number?
Well, I know we thought the 5.2 was a little high, but we hadn't really, we're still muddling around with it. I know the state is like next year is at 3.2. So and that's usually, yeah. And John, I don't know. We're still kind of thinking about it.
Well, I
My
guess
problem about me commenting on it is that Susan and I are a majority. And so I'd be for me to comment would be
Yeah.
making a decision in a meeting that hasn't been advertised. So,
my question was more of timing, when you think you would make your decision, not.
timing wise, we're going to have it probably in the month of November, probably the first part.
So what I have proposed, because of our budget schedule and budget presentation to the board, and there are 3 budgets, one of which is this SQURF, is the first meeting in November. I'm going to provide them the recommendation and resolution for that COLA adjustment. And at that time, the board will have to make a decision on what that's going to be, either accept that resolution, amend it, or reject the resolution.
I guess my only reason for asking that is, are we a little bit ahead of ourselves if your board is going to make the final determination of what is going to be in the budget? Should we not wait for that decision before we adopt and recommend?
I think I would go with that, John. I think we should wait.
I mean, you heard my thoughts on what the numbers should be, but really, I would prefer waiting until the district makes that determination, and then we can build the SCORF budget around that.
So if the board makes a different determination, would you like to see the presentation of the budget information for the operating and maintenance budget with the salaries and benefits reflective of that decision? It's budgeted at 5.2%, but that does not mean that that has to be spent. It's just a budgeted amount.
I appreciate it, but for us to go to our council and say, we're recommending the budget that is 5 point whatever percent,
Mhm.
I would rather it be more in line with reality than what we think it's going to be.
Mhm. I agree. I feel uncomfortable with this until.
Okay.
It
Not
doesn't,
a problem. We will have a decision. I mean, that's the first part of November is where we're supposed to make a decision. So,
Okay, that works. That's not very far away.
Yeah, we
No.
have-
Oh, the board meeting will be scheduled for, looking at the calendar here, at November 1st.
yeah,
November 1st?
Yeah.
Okay, then probably what we should just do is go ahead and schedule our meeting. Because that's all that's on the agenda. Is unless
Correct.
anyone else has anything else to discuss on that agenda, I mean, on the
Okay.
budget. Okay, so this will be a really brief meeting. And let's see, I suppose Jackie,
Yes,
you're gonna be sailing the friendly seas out there somewhere, huh?
just next week. I'm
Just
back on the first.
Okay. What time of day do you have your meeting, you guys, on the 1st?
The regular scheduled meeting is at 3 p.m.
What about having that follow-up meeting on that day a little bit later? Does that work for everyone?
We could also, we have a special board meeting that is coming up on the 25th to discuss the capital projects and those cost escalations as previously discussed. We do have time to change that agenda and potentially have a discussion, and I could prepare that resolution for the board on the 25th if the two commissioners don't have an issue with that. What I'm trying to do is give folks as much time as possible for any considerations or any future discussion. But I could do that if the committee would like.
Well, I don't want to put Susan and Jim in a position of making a decision on what's going on within the district, because Jim suggests
Mhm.
it's not been advertised. So
No,
Well,
it
we
would
can
just be,
advertise for the 25th. We already have a meeting
yeah,
for the 25th of this month.
Mm.
We could
Would-
move it up. And there's no reason we can't move it up. So we
It
could
would-
have the decision by next Monday.
it would be an added agenda item only. It's already an advertised meeting.
The other thing to consider is normally this group meets on the third Wednesday, and that would be the 17th. So I'm just throwing it out there if you wanted to still keep your decision meeting on the 1st of November, so.
because either way, we got plenty of time before it comes to city council.
Right. So not knowing your folks' schedule, I'm just trying to be as accommodating as possible. So you have something more solid. When does the city usually meet?
9th and the 23rd of November is our two meetings.
Right.
Business meetings.
So we usually meet on the first and third Mondays. So the November 1st would work for you folks then.
yeah,
Okay.
for council, it'd be fine for November
Okay.
1.
Uh-huh.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay,
And-
so 6:30?
Yeah, 6:30. I was gonna ask, that's gonna be at 6:30 on the 1st.
All right.
John, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just clarifying, that's what time this group is going to get back together, is at 6:30 on the 1st.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, if we're
Okay.
really going to celebrate, I'll deliver cookies to everybody's house.
I know, Jay. It's like, that's the bad part, miss your cookies.
All right, well, that sounds good. Then I think, that being said, we can adjourn.
All right, good seeing y'all.
Yep.
Likewise,
All
good to
right.
see you. Good
Thank you.
evening.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you so much.
Yep.
Take care.